divisions we now face are going to stall our ability to overcome corporate culture?
That the divisions we face, I think there can be a kind of unifying around the destructiveness of corporate culture while embracing those divisions. I think that the divisions are going to be inevitable. I mean, I would say for me the one line that I wouldn't cross is violence. And I'm about to go out in November, end of October, to debate my friend Derek Getson on this issue in San Francisco. Not only from a moral point of view, because I know what violence does to people, but also because just from a tactical point of view, it isn't going to work. And there will be a great deal of frustration, because if movements like this grow, and let's pray and hope they do, then the state is going to respond with further and further or heavier forms of control. I mean, anyone who's been to the G20, I didn't get to Toronto, but I was in Pittsburgh, saw it. I mean, they militarized the center of Pittsburgh. They turned it into the green zone. They brought back a combat battalion from Iraq. I mean, literally, they had checkpoints. We've militarized our police forces, these SWAT teams, so that there's no difference between a raid conducted in the middle of the night in Oakland and one conducted in Fallujah. I mean, that's what happens. The disease of empire throughout the history of empire is always brought back to the homeland. Thucydides wrote about it in Athens, that Athens expanding empire, Thucydides wrote, led it to become a tyrant abroad and then a tyrant at home. So that the tyranny that Athens imposed on others, it finally imposed on itself. And that's what we've done. All of these mercenary forces, Blackwater, now renamed Z, all of the measures of control that we use in the outer reaches of empire are now migrating back internally. And they're brutal and horrible measures. And they're deeply frustrating, and they will prod people, even well-meaning people, towards violence. And as somebody that's had an intimate connection with violence for 2 decades, I just cannot say enough, don't go there. And it really is what they want. It's what they want. Because they know that's the language they speak. That's a language they understand. This is a language that's completely alien and foreign to them. And it drives them batshit, which is where we want them.
Interesting question. PSA naked body scanning. Does the government have the right to see our sons and daughters naked because they purchased a ticket from a corporation?
No. Again, it's. I look at like what happens in airports as a kind of conditioning. You know, they herd us through like sheep. They humiliate us, and it's a way of conditioning us to accept humiliation, control, intrusive control, and unfortunately, you know, we put up with it, and it is a way of forming a population to deal with a totalitarian structure. I mean, look, the rise of most totalitarian movements is a gradual process. They slowly chip away your civil liberties. They almost imperceptibly, and this was true in Nazi Germany. I'm not saying we're Nazi Germany, but you know, Hitler only mentioned the Jews 3 times between 1933 and 1938. It was all about moral renewal and new glory, and yet meanwhile, within the law courts, the Nazi Party was rewriting the legal system to essentially make legal what under any functioning judicial system is illegal, which is of course mass murder. And I think that the corporate forces have corrupted our legal process. I mean, the Supreme Court now is in the hands of the corporate state. That's what Citizens United is about. So, we'll do 2 more.
2 more questions. All right, here we go. I answered this one. I think I was like 5 times. Chris, are you for equal pay? Chris, are you for equal pay or equal sacrifice paid for working? If not,
I think all of the American workforce should be unionized, and because it's unions that created the American middle class, and without unions, essentially workers, as we have seen, are utterly bereft of any kind of protection, and it's just a kind of gradual chipping away in greater and greater forms of abuse.
Do you believe in all this stuff about the government will use martial law against us for their threats?
Yeah, they may not call it martial law, but I mean, look at the G20. Go back to the G20. I mean, what was it? That was martial law. It was. You militarized the center of a major American city, infiltrated all of the groups. And, most of the people protesting in Pittsburgh were retired Quakers with sandals. I mean, the amount of force leveled against the G20 protests were, again, as is true here, utterly disproportionate to what was going on. But it was meant to send a message, which is don't try this. That's why they worked so hard to break Bradley Manning, who is a dissident, I mean a hero, right? And so it's not just about the act itself that they're seeking to curtail. It is about sending a message to anybody who might contemplate doing the same thing.
In light of media, of the biased media, any tips for getting the real stories and messages out there to the majority of the public in hope of raising awareness and support?
But because we're locked out of the corporate media, we have to play around the edges. And it's a lot more time-consuming because we can't reach the numbers. But that's true for all revolutionary movements. They were always locked out of mainstream systems of communication. So it's why, I'll talk to any community radio station I think that it'll take more time, but I think there are systems of communication, and in this sense the web is useful, whereby if we keep at it, if we keep sort of slogging forward, we'll be able to get messages out that the corporate mainstream seeks to silence. One of the most amazing things for me during the election was watching what they did to Dennis Kucinich. You had the debate in Iowa. I'm just giving an example of control. So the debate in Iowa, all these debates are sponsored by corporations, and you had the pharmaceutical and insurance industry sponsoring the debate in Iowa, and the last person they wanted up on that platform was Dennis Kucinich, who supports single-payer, not-for-profit health care for all Americans, which is a much more efficient system, not to mention fair. And they shut him out, and they shut Nader out, and they shut Physicians for a National Health Plan out because their response is a rational response, one that would save money and would save lives. 45,000 Americans died last year because they couldn't afford medical care. 1 million people went into personal bankruptcy last year because they couldn't pay their medical bills. And we live in this sick environment where it is legally permissible for a corporation to hold a sick child hostage while their parents bankrupt themselves trying to save their sons or daughters. And we watched after the so-called Obamacare, 2,000 pages written by corporate lobbyists, the equivalent of the bank bailout bill for the pharmaceutical and insurance industry, $400 million in subsidies. We watched them grant exemptions to these for-profit entities because they didn't want to insure chronically ill children. For me, that's a window into the moral depravity of the corporate state. And one of many examples of moral depravity, and why it's incumbent upon us to fight back. I don't want to over-dramatize this, but again, because I come out of a theological background, not only are these systems of death, but resistance movements like this become movements that are fighting, and not in a figurative way, but in a literal way, fighting for life, fighting on behalf of life.
You can go.
I'm loving it. I came here to write, though. I want to write something.
One more, that's it. I think it's okay. If we must live more simply and humbly, how do you envision a new America in the 99%? I'll leave it up on that.
70% of the U.S. economy is driven by consumption, so we actually have a fair bit of power. If we can break that cycle of consumption, we can begin to hurt these corporate entities. The fossil fuel industry, I mean, half of all electricity in this country is caused by coal. And I've been working in southern West Virginia, which is being turned by these large coal companies into wastelands. The water polluted, the air polluted. I was in villages in West Virginia where everybody in the village, including the children, have had their gallbladders removed. And, you know, it's something that I've not done in a way that I feel I should. I mean, I have a car. You know, I hate my home. And I think that the more we can sever ourselves from the drugs that maintain the consumer lifestyle, including fossil fuels, not only morally do we have a capacity to justify the way we're living, but we can begin, even in a physical way, to hurt the entities that are trying to kill us. Because that's what they're going to do. They're going to kill us. I mean, sitting around pretending climate change doesn't exist, that's the one alternative, the lunatic fringe of the Republican Party. But the other alternative is just as self-deluded. The idea that somehow we can adjust to climate change. And poor Bill McKibben is out there slogging this issue day in and day out. And he has become as much of a media political pariah as Ralph Nader, because this is the truth that the powers that hold us in their grip do not want explicated. So I think we do have to begin to reconfigure our own lives in ways that defy the definition of a good life that is handed to us by a consumer society.
Thank you very much for your time. Everybody says thank you.
Oh, yeah, not at all.
Support you.
Yeah. No, I'm really happy to be here. Yeah, not at all. I wish I brought it.
Oh, great. You know what? No curse. You might have to smoke a cigarette. Go ahead. All right, everybody. That was Chris. Buy his book. Support him.